have my guest on the line, and Merle Temple is with me today, and I'm excited about having him back. So, Merle, are you with me?
I'm here in Tupelo, Mississippi, home of the king of rock and roll.
Whoa! All righty then. So, how you doing?
I'm doing good. People come here from all over the world to see Elvis's birthplace, and I just had a dinner with a group from Sweden, and nice folks, and I just meet folks from all over the world, even when I don't leave town.
Wow. Okay. So you just been out there hobnobbing with Elvis folks and everybody else's folks, huh?
That's right. Meeting a lot of nice folks, signing books, talking about Hollywood and what you were talking about, and things like that. Having fun in my old age.
Okay. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you very much, Merle, for coming and coming back and being a part of the Wyleaner show, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to just simply rake you over the coals. Because that's what Wyleaner do anyway. But you know what, you've been pretty strong. You've been dealing with me, and so I just want to say thank you very much for doing that. Okay. And so now what's going to happen is we're going to go ahead and get started. But what I want to do is give out the phone number for anybody that wants to call in and ask questions during the time that we get our dialogue going. Okay. So for anybody that's calling locally, the phone number is 702-650-5588. That's 702-650-5588 for all local callers. And anyone that's calling from anywhere else in the whole wide world, 1-800-366-8883. Okay. 1-800-366-8883. And we have Mr. Merle Temple here with us today, and we're talking about his experiences in Hollywood and his experiences with his narcotics, all kinds of stuff that he's gone through. I can't even name everything this man has gone through, but anyway, we're touching on some of it, just a little tidbit of it, okay? And so we're going to go ahead and get started back with that. I know we're going to take a break in a couple minutes, but before we do, I'm going to go ahead and kick back in with the questions so we can move forward. Merle, how about that?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So, Merle, we ended last week, and I want to pick up here where I said, so now some would say, okay, you've been in the penitentiary. And when you go to the penitentiary, you have a goal of making people believe that you are the innocent one, or that you have changed your life, or most oftentimes found God. So, have you truly found God, or are you just simply trying to sell a few books, Merle? Come on, talk to Wyleaner about that.
Well, Wyleaner, that's the same thing that the skeptics said about Chuck Colson in the Watergate days when he went to prison and came out. But Chuck, who is one of my heroes, and I read his book Born Again when I was in prison. Chuck came out. Never forgot the guys there. God broke him in prison like he did me, and Chuck went on to establish the largest prison ministry, not only in the United States, but in the world. And I just finished submitting testimony to the Chuck Colson Task Force on reform of the federal prison system, and they'll report to Congress in December. And the books. So far, I tell you what, people don't understand about books. The average book each year that's printed sells about 100 copies. And except for the big guys, the big houses behind them, we've been fortunate to sell more than that, of course, but we just try to break even if we can, and we haven't broken even yet because we travel so much and speak so much, and we give away so many books to schools and libraries and prisons and everything. But hard as that was in prison, in one way, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because God turned off the noise of the world so I could hear him and find out who and what never mattered and who always will.
Well, Merle, I saw something here that someone said, and I actually don't remember where I got this from, but someone wrote about you, said that, and they're talking about you, and they said he says he has a prison ministry called Prisoners of the Lord, and he expects to spend his remaining years serving Jesus Christ. He credits Jesus with showing him that right with God is all that matters. So, is that, did I find accurate information there?
Yeah, I remember that. It was actually from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, a little piece they did right before I came home, and believe me, I was so thrilled that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, who's not what I'd call Christian friendly, if an article about me could get the name of Jesus mentioned in that big paper, that was a victory. I claim that as a victory, and but it's accurate. That's all I live for. I certainly wouldn't even be writing these books if it weren't for my promise to God and to the Lord that I would tell my story and his story of redemption and second chances. And because some of this stuff, I go back and I write from memory. I write it as fiction, but I write from memory and dig up all those bones. And I tell you, it's pretty painful.
Okay.
And sometimes I would just quit if I had made that promise to him, but I can't break that promise.
Okay. So listen, Merle, I see here that you wrote a 4-page letter to former President George W. Bush requesting a pardon. Did you get that?
No, nobody gets pardons from especially from Bush. He was the stingiest of all presidents on a pardon, and they're just very rare and just very hard to get. And usually, in the history of most presidents, the only people who get pardons are those who made large donations to campaigns, or either they're related to someone who has, and that certainly rules me out.
Okay, so you did not get the part. You did write the 4-page letter, is that correct?
I did,
Requesting
yeah.
the pardon. Okay, but you just didn't get it. Okay, so so what happened? You did how much time did you end up doing in relation to this particular incident?
Well, I probably wouldn't have served any time or very little time if I had honored my agreement to cooperate with the government, but that kind of fell in the ditch, and we didn't much like each other, and I thought they were trying to ask me to say things that really didn't happen, and so they punished me for going off the reservation, and they gave me an 8-year sentence, and I wound up serving 5.5 years in 3 different institutions, and at each place, against all odds, we formed Christian movie nights, which everybody said could not happen, but they did, and we exposed thousands of men to the gospel of Jesus Christ, and so many stories to tell in this 3rd book.
Okay. Well, Merle, I know that you have been through a lot, and you've dealt with a lot of stuff out there as far as your life being threatened and all that. And so I guess my next question would be to you: Have you ever been involved with drugs? And tell us about the narcotics experiences from your position as a narcotics agent.
Oh, well, when I came out of Ole Miss in the early 70s, I had never seen illegal drugs, but President Nixon had just declared war on drugs, the first war, and formed the DEA, and a lot of state institutions mirrored from that. And so I probably foolishly decided that was a place for me, and I went into the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics, first undercover, and eventually became the first captain in the agency. But I bought drugs undercover from dealers, and was held hostage, in South Mississippi all night while they debated where to dump my body. And the one across from me with the guns on me, he chewed up and ate and swallowed double-edged Gillette razor blades, and and bled out, and blood
Whoa,
bubbled
whoa,
in his
whoa,
mouth.
whoa, 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 whoa! Wait a minute now. Hold on. What are you talking about? Who chewed up and swallowed double-edged razor blades?
A heroin dealer in South Mississippi in 1972. They came upon me all of a sudden and to do a deal, and then we went out in the country in this remote place. It looked like every scene out of every bad B horror movie you've ever seen. And when I walked in, they had decided not to sell me the drugs, just to kill me and keep their drugs and take my money and be ahead on the game in their opinion. And so when I got in, they did that, and I had no one knew where I was. I had no backup because there weren't many of us in those days. And this guy, he was a little crazy, and he sat across from me, and one sat side of me with a gun on me, the other one sat across from me, and he pulled out the old double-edged Gillette razor blades, which would cut the end of your finger right off if people are old enough to remember those like I am. And he put it in his mouth, and he bit and twisted it, and then he bit it in two and actually swallowed it. And when he grinned at me, the blood just bubbled up at each corner of his mouth and gushed down on his throat. And he put his hand in the back of his mouth, and he said, "Want some?" I said, "I don't believe I'd care for any." And then he took a big full box of long stem kitchen matches, lit them all at once, and swallowed the flame with the blood rushing out of his mouth. And that's when my whole life flashed before my eyes, and I saw images buried in my subconscious. I thought I was about to die. And I didn't pray much in those days. I was a very nominal Christian, very nominal. But I prayed that night. And it's a long story, but I survived and then went on to be a topside investigator. And the next year, I was lured out by two contract killers near Memphis. Two Dixie Mafia contract killers lured me out to kill me because we had hit a organized crime setup near Memphis that where they had bought off local officials, and it was very much like the old Walking Tall movie, if anybody remembers those. Some of that very same crowd from those days came down into that syndicate with the Mafia and the Dixie Mafia, and they didn't take kindly to it. I was lured out and actually met two of the contract killers that were hired to kill me. And right after I left the house to go meet them, my informant on the inside called my wife, my first wife, who's deceased now, to tell Merle it's a setup, are going to kill me, and they couldn't reach me. And a lot of things like that happened. And when I was captain made captain in the agency over the north half of the state, we were doing a heroin deal, my men were, in Columbus, Mississippi. We had bought drugs from them before, and we were going to buy a large quantity and arrest them in the middle of the deal because the money was so much we couldn't let it walk away. And we did that to draw out people behind them. We wouldn't trust them with that amount of drugs. And when I was leaving my office to go meet the agents and jumped in my car and cranked up and put my hand on the gear shift, spirit filled up my car. Never experienced anything like that in my life. It scared me to death because I wasn't walking closely with God then. And it wrapped all around me and all through me. And it said, "Go back and get the bulletproof vest." And then it was gone. It scared me to death. And I thought I was losing my mind. And I said, "We don't have reason to believe it's more dangerous than usual." Agents didn't like to wear the vest. They were bulky and hard to conceal. But I tried to leave again, and again the spirit came in the car, and it wasn't optional. It commanded me to go back and get the vest, and I did, and I got to convince the agents to wear them. The deal got away from us. It got out in the country where we couldn't stay close to them on surveillance, and we're out on this high road and like a levee with depressions on either side and swamps, and a railroad trestle running across, and a clump of pine trees by the railroad trestle, and behind those pine trees was a sniper with a high-powered rifle. And when they went to do the deal, they opened fire, and we had a terrible, terrible gun battle there. We shot them, they shot us. It was just a scene out of your worst nightmares. And later in the hospital, when I walked up to where one of my men was laying there, they were cutting his clothes off of him, and his white bulletproof vest was soaked crimson in blood. The doctor said, "Look at this, Merle. One round hit him in the lower extremities, one sliced through his right arm. This one hit him in the chest, but it punched through the chest because that's the best we had then wouldn't stop a high-powered rifle. But he said it punched through it, took some of the power out of it, deflected it, so it went in behind his right breast, skittered around the barrel of his rib cage, and popped out behind his left breast." He said, "Merle, if he hadn't had that vest on, it would have taken out his heart and lungs, and he would have been dead before he hit the ground." I still get chill bumps now. Oh, it's almost 40 years ago, like I did then. You could almost feel and hear the shuffle of angels' feet around us. And I knew that God was with us, and he was with me. I didn't understand it, but he intervened that day to save our lives. So those are just a few things, routine things that happened when I was in the Bureau of Narcotics.
Okay, I'm through. Stick a fork in me, I'm done. Okay.
That's kind of what I said at the end of that long day.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, no, I can't imagine. Woo, mercy. Okay, well that you know what that kind of sounds like something that I probably would see on your friends from Criminal Minds.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why they read the manuscript and they read all of that written as fiction, and they loved it, and that's why they called me to Hollywood. They said, "This is great. We want to represent you. Come to Hollywood." So we loaded up the Murano and drove across America and just had a fairy tale experience out there in Hollywood. And they treated us like we were celebrities. But that's what started it all with the Hollywood thing.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, I asked for it, so you gave it.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah,
that's just the tip of the iceberg.
I can believe it. So we're not gonna bust the iceberg on the Wyleaner show. Okay, but listen, I know that you travel around and you do speak at various places for different people around the country. And so I guess what my next question would be to you is, what is your message that you give to people when you speak, at these various places? What kind of message do you share with them?
Well, I tell them a little bit about my life and what's happened. But I try to tell them try to warn people that the world is a dark and dangerous place. That for those of us who are Christians, we need to be reminded this is not our home. We're just passing through. It's just a rented world. That's where I got the title of my second book. It's not our home, just passing through to eternity. And I try to tell them how life really is, how government really is, not how the media or some people portray it to be, and how dangerous some of the people in power are, and warn them that how easy it is to lose yourself if you let these power brokers in the world turn you around once with your eyes shut and your conscience muted. You're lost. You've lost your soul before you know it. And there's nothing, believe me, there's nothing in this world. I can tell you from my experience that there's nothing in this world worth trading away your eternal soul for. So that's some of the things that we share with them, and of course my faith in Jesus Christ, and in a very personal way.
So, Merle, I guess I know that you've really been dealing with some stuff. So prison though is one of the things that a lot of people have a really hard time coming back from, and dealing with the repercussions of, and that type of thing. So are you an advocate for prisoners now, or how does your world revolve when it comes to prison and prisoners, and do you devote any time to help them at all, or are you just kind of off on your own? What's the deal on that?
No, the prison ministry we started inside at 3 institutions. It goes on. All the movies that we got donated and purchased ourselves, there are hundreds of those that are still there for men to view and see when they come in and out of prison. And we just ask them when we left, you'll take my place. When you leave, get somebody to take your place. And people who do know my story, not everyone does the whole story, but they come to me after they've read my books, particularly my second book, where Michael Barker is headed off to federal prison in the end. They come to me and tell me my son's in prison, my husband's in prison. Would you write them? Would you talk with them? And I do that, and we send books to them. We send books to prisons, and I want to help them in any way I can. And when I go out and speak, especially when I speak to churches and to my fellow Christians, I tell them and I warn them, not just for the inmates, but for themselves, that we sometimes have a bad habit of freezing men and women who we think they were, maybe on faulty information even, but who we think they were yesterday, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I tell them, aren't you glad, that God didn't do that, before he sent his son to die for us on the cross, for my sins and your sins. And so, a lot of light bulbs go on when you look out at the audience and the congregations, and people get convicted, and we have some pretty tender moments, and I cry and they cry, and it's just not an easy thing to stand up and bare your soul again and again, but that's what I promised God I would do, and so again, that's what we do. So we're always looking for some new way to partner with prisons, and we're working on that in next year to see how many would actually like me to come to the prisons and start speaking directly to the inmates.
Okay, so why do you feel that God spared you so many times when you could have died? You could have been dead. What do you feel like the reason is that God would have even bothered to spare you?
Well, that's one of the big mysteries of life, and particularly in my case, because I saw all that he was doing for me, and I tell people now, I don't know why he loves me so much, but I sure am glad he does. Because I wrestle with it. Even inside when I was doing the Christian movie nights, a friend of mine inside, his son was killed at 19. And of course, they wouldn't let him go to the funeral, but they had a big memorial service inside. And he asked me to officiate at those services. And I was terrified because I didn't feel worthy. I was still wrestling with that, but I did because I couldn't refuse him, because he was so good to me when my first wife passed away right after I went in. And that was a turning point for me. And I finally, had to learn, still learning sometimes, that God has a history, of using imperfect people. If you look throughout the Bible, from Moses to David to Paul, for heaven's sakes, can you imagine when Barnabas showed up with the other Christians who were in hiding and said, hey, we got this new brother in Christ, that I'm bringing here. And it turns out to be Paul, who was Saul, the man they were running from, who had persecuted Christians and had them killed and stoned and so forth. And so it's one of those mysteries from life. But when you feel it and you draw close to God and it's real, it's something that you have to be obedient to. And it really doesn't matter whether we understand it or not. He'll take care of the rest. You just go out and be obedient. And he sure has opened a lot of doors for us. And all the experts told me it could never be open. Hollywood, that could never happen. Over here, over there, those things could not happen. And they said, and then they were confused. They say, we're the experts. How did that all happen? And I said, well, there's only one expert I listen to. He says, go. I go, he says, do, I do. Very simple plan, and we're sticking to it.
Well, some people would go as far as to say that sometimes we have to be placed in a certain position in order to be brought to where that God wants us to be. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I was out trying to save the world. I forgot the world already had a savior, and it wasn't Merle. And I had to get past that. I've been that way all my life. I was a guy in a white hat. I always wanted to ride in and clean up Dodge City and save the damsel in distress. And the world isn't quite as nice, neat, and tidy place as as I thought it was watching TV in the 50s and early 60s. So he put me there where all that noise of the world was turned off, and I could hear him. And he began to draw close to me. And when he did, that was just the best thing in the world I had ever experienced, that peace and that purpose that I had been seeking in all the wrong places. I finally found out it was Jesus Christ all along, right there with me.
Okay, well, when I was going over your material, I noticed you said something about an unholy trinity. Which sounds rather strange. An unholy trinity. It is. It looks like it's in relation to. Looks like you're referring to business, crime, and politics. The unholy trinity. So, why do you call business, crime, and politics the unholy trinity?
Well, I learned it's a play on words, of course, talking about the Holy Trinity. But the unholy trinity I found was business, crime, and politics. And, I found I moved in all of those worlds, in the corporate world, business world, and of course I dealt with organized crime figures and so forth, drug dealers in the bureau days. And, when you're out at midnight, you've got a tip, and, you're sitting there and you're watching the governor's mansion of a state, and you see Carlos Marcello, the most powerful godfather in the country at that time, pull up and go in for a private meeting with the governor. You see all these things, and you get where not much surprises you anymore. And so I saw a lot of that, and it was a lot of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and a little winking and nodding goes on between all those three forces, and that a lot of people would deny, but they can deny it all they want to, but that happens. And it's all about it's all about preserving power and money. And there's some people who have just decided that they would rather rule in hell on earth than to serve eternally in heaven. So they made that Faustian deal with the devil, to do whatever it takes to maintain that power. And if they hurt people or people get killed or people suffer, so be it. They'll get up. Some of them get up, but the politicians get up and smile before the cameras. And some of them will even pray with good Christians who come there who think they're godly men. They'll pray with them and then mock them as soon as they leave the room. And that's one reason why so many of them I have known are so reluctant to retire. It's not just the power they don't want to give up. They equate retirement with death, and they're terrified to stand before their maker and answer because they know what they've done. And so toward the end of their life, they start smiling a lot and giving money to widows and orphans and say, I really wasn't such a bad guy, was I? And, that's not how it works, but it's all too common now in this world that we live in.
Yeah, well, I can definitely agree with that in a sense. So tell me, what do you I noticed something else here that you call the federal government the Messianic. Well, I guess I'm saying this right. You call the federal government the Messianic state. What in the world do you mean by that?
Well, it's a sad state of affairs, but the government that we have now in Washington has grown so big and so distant, from the people, and it's just the size and complexity and the reach of the federal government is just really beyond the comprehension of the average citizen in the United States. there are thousands and thousands and thousands of laws on the books for them to use however suits them. They keep asking for more power here, more power there. Sometimes they tell us it's needed for organized crime. Sometimes they say it's needed for terrorism, but then they turn it on the average citizen. And the government of the United States today, in my opinion, has drifted so far, from the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and from the fears that the founders of this country had of big government. Of course, big government, the big heavy hand of government was England and King George to them, and they didn't want that to ever happen. They wanted to not create a government that would be a mirror of that, but that would truly be a government where liberty was prized and cherished. And today, what we have a big atheistic state in Washington, and they really want to be our gods. They want us to believe and look to them for everything, that they provide all of our needs, and all we need to do is bow before them and worship Washington. And their chief competitor for the hearts and minds of the people, just like it has been down through the ages for the last 2,000 years, is Jesus Christ. And so this messianic state who wants to be our gods, they have to try to separate us from him. And you look around now in the headlines and all the cultural battles that are being fought across the country, and where Christians are being called on to mute their faith, to not practice it or speak of it in the public square. It's just full force upon us now, and it's only going to get worse. But the Messianic state, I think, is, if I had to, somebody asked me to give one term that I thought described the government today, and that would be it. Big and personal, but wants to be our guides and wants to be our all in all. And of course, to a Christian, that can never, ever happen. We look to our higher power and to the law above the law.
Okay. Well, thanks for answering that. I never heard that term before, though, Messianic state, but I'm glad you explained it so that people don't get the wrong idea about what you meant by that. But listen, we're going to be taking a break in a minute, but I want to know if you could go back and change some of your past, what would it be? What would you change about your past if you could go back and change it?
Well, of course, some people think, well, you'd certainly want to not get involved in the big battle in Atlanta that led to so much pain and agony. But I can't really say that, because out of that came a personal relationship with Jesus Christ that I don't know that I would ever have experienced or known. So I guess my one thing, of course, everybody has a little twist and turn here that led to something not so pleasant that they would say they would change. But
right.
The one thing that I would do is I would want to know Jesus sooner. That would be probably my one thing I would change. That I would hope that there would be some way for me to meet him and understand him and to draw close to him like I have now, because I cherish the time that he's given me. As someone that he has rescued.
Merle, I just want to ask you, I got more questions for you, but we're almost out of time here. But what I want to do is wrapping this thing up. I would like to find out from you, what is it that you've done differently in this aspect of your life compared to before this complete tragedy that happened to you? What have you done differently?
Oh, it's hard to know where to begin. It's so different. I mean, everybody in the old days would have said, well, he's a nice guy and he helps a lot of people and so forth. But, one big difference is now is I don't have any hate or bitterness in my heart for anybody. You know, when people had a Satanist attack me a while back, and you know, I feel sorry for people like that. They don't know who I know, and I just try to tell them, you know, who and what changed my life, and I hope that, and I try to live my life now with this great responsibility, knowing that when people meet me, you know, I may be the only Christian that they ever meet. That's an awesome responsibility. I may be the only Bible that they ever read. And that's an awesome responsibility. And so you have to die to self. And that's what I try to do each day, that he increases, Christ increases in me, and Merle decreases. And I realize again every day, you know, it's not about me at all. It's about him and doing the work for the kingdom of Jesus Christ.
Okay, so Merle, if you had to tell someone that's out there in the world somewhere that's going through something similar or maybe the exact same thing that you've been through, what would you leave them with?
Oh, well, I would just tell them that, you know, that you're never alone. All you got to do when you're down, way down in the valley, you know, as one writer wrote about me. So I was so far down in the valley, there was only one direction to look, and that was up. And there was only one way out, and that was across. And I would just tell people, you know, he is there. It's the greatest free gift in the world, you know, to, you know, reaching out to Jesus. He's reaching out to you. And I'm just so humble that he is using me now, as frail and vessel as I may be, and that people are looking at me now and seeing how I responded to tragedy and wanted to know why, how this happened, and why are you so at peace. And my lawyer back in those days, he tells all of his clients now who the government jumps on, they think it's over, their life's over. He tells them, I got 2 words for you, Merle Temple. And I say, well, I appreciate that, but my 2 words are Jesus Christ.
Well, that's 2 words. Okay, so what if they're involved with drugs, you know, or you know, I know that you didn't say anything about you actually having been involved with drugs. You were doing it undercover as far as your narcotics job was concerned, right? That's correct, right?
Oh, right. But I tell you what, I was under all that stress. Even though it was from my doctor, they had me on Xanax for my stress. And so I learned on the flip side of the coin what it's like to take drugs and become dependent on them, which I denied that I was dependent in all that stress. But then I found out that those harmless little Xanaxes weren't harmless after all. They were very addictive. And so I found out what that was like, what it's like to withdraw from drugs. And I would tell people that, you know, if you're out there looking for some kind of high, there's no greater high in the world than Jesus Christ. And before I left, I wanted to ask you, since I've been a guest on your program, does that mean I can get a special rate from State Farm? Just kidding.
Well, now you know that's a good one. I'm asking people to ask me some questions on my show, but well, not really, because I really don't let people ask me too many questions on my show. But now that's a real good one right there. I'm sure my sponsor is getting a kick out of that. Well, you really have to be in Las Vegas to get that deal, okay? My sponsor is Mike Whitford over at State Farm, and he's Las Vegas only. So if you move to Las Vegas and you want your insurance, all the insurance you want, you just check with my guy Mike Whitford over there at State Farm.
Okay, I will.
But this is not a nationwide advertisement, okay?
Okay.
That's funny. Okay, so Merle, I want to just tell you thank you so much for being a guest on my show for the past two shows. It's been awesome. And what you've been through, I'm glad. I would have never been able to survive that. And so, especially the guy with the double-edged razor blades. So anyway, I'm giving you 1 minute for your closing thought right now, and you can begin.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on. I just tell folks that if you'd like to look at my books, A Ghostly Shade of Pale and A Rented World, you can find them on Amazon.com, or you can go to merletemple.com, MERLETEMPLE.com, and see some of our videos and audio interviews. And if you'd like to have me come speak, I would love to come and build it into our schedule, no matter where it may be. Just email me at Merle Temple, MERLETEMPLE, at bellsouth.net, BELLSOUTH.net, all lowercase, and let me know how I might help you in your ministry or speak at your church. We really enjoy getting out and meeting people, and as you can probably tell, I never meet a stranger.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, Merle. And for those of you who just heard what he just said, I think anybody that's out there that has a prison ministry of any type, I think Merle would probably be, one of those people you might bring in since he's been there, done that.